What's up, everybody? Welcome to the 247 Sports College Football Show. My name is Josh Taylor, joined by Barton Simmons, Trey Scott, later by Connor Tapp. How are we doing today, guys?
Ready. We're ready to roll. Got top fives we're going to talk about, a little debate about who the best team in college football is.
A little hot seat talk.
But
NCAA
we're
talk.
really in the season when you got hot seat talk going.
We don't have to make up storylines anymore.
Hit us with your questions, comments. We'll read those throughout the show. All right, let's go ahead and hit it, guys. So we are a month in. We've seen, a good amount of football from everybody. It's probably a good time to see who's like a pretender, who's not, or who's really good. So let's go and get to your top fives. Let's start with that.
Yeah. So as we kind of look at all of this, we got some stuff to talk about. I'm just going to say it is nice that there are more than two good teams in college football.
3 different number ones.
We have three different number ones. Barton, let's start with you because you're the most important guy here. Ohio State.
Thank you, Trey.
Ohio State. Walk us through that.
No, here's the thing, and I think of you as a progressive thinker, Trey.
Yeah.
I don't think of you as someone that's just sheep that follows the crowd and is just going to do what everyone else is doing. So I'm a little bit surprised, if not disappointed, to see you sticking with Clemson at number one. So I'm going to let you defend it, but I'm going to first tell you why I don't think they should be number one. Because I don't even know what that means.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm going to let you finish it.
Oh, I got you. All right. Well, look, here's where I stand on this. You can think Clemson is going to win the national championship, and I wouldn't fault you there. You could think that Clemson is likely the best team in the country, and I probably wouldn't even fault you there either. But if you believe, as I believe, man, maybe you don't believe this, but I believe that the rankings should reflect what's happening on the field, not hunches, not last season, not preconceived notions, not recruiting rankings, whatever. It should reflect, it can reflect all that stuff week one, even week two. But at this point, we have seen a significant body of work from everybody. And it's hard to make a case that Clemson is the best team in the country based on their body of work. And I think that the polls should reflect that. You can still believe they'll win the national championship. You can bet on them. You can pick them, all that. And I think that's very defensible. But I don't understand having them number one in the polls.
So I didn't change my top two from preseason, Clemson, Alabama. And it's not that I'm disregarding Ohio State's or LSU's body of work. But Clemson beat Texas A&M. So even if we wanted to talk body of work, it's not like they've been a joke of a team so far. I can't unsee 44-16, guys. I know this is a new year and this is a new team, but body of work, why doesn't that still count?
It's a different team. It's a totally different team.
Well, I guess, but why can't the defense is playing as well as usual? Okay, the offense, yes, they're struggling, but these are the same guys who put up 44 points, I guess minus a pick six against Alabama. This is still Trevor Lawrence, Justin Ross, Travis Etienne. The offensive line has to play better, but as far as body of work, that happened in 2019. That game was in January.
Oh, man.
Same with Alabama.
I think that is an antiquated way of looking at it. That is an old, crusty old AP voter way of looking at it. And I don't believe that's the way we should look at it if we're going to be evolved in our thinking. This is the rankings and polls should be incredibly volatile over the first half of the season even. Now, once we get back into, game week 8, 9, 10, then, yeah, you shouldn't have significant moves because at that point, we should have a list that reflects fairly accurately what we've seen to that point. And then, of course, things shouldn't change that dramatically. But
okay, why Alabama? Why is Alabama your number two? Because they're my number two because I know what Alabama can do. I know what this team can do. But they're your number two.
Yeah.
Per your argument, why isn't LSU higher or Georgia higher?
Well, because I think Alabama, again, you're talking about a Clemson team that wasn't all that impressive against Texas A&M and almost lost to North Carolina. I have Clemson, 5? It's not like I think they're bad. And it's not. And again, I would have no problem if you're sitting here saying, hey, they're the number 5 team in the country for me, but I still think they're going to win the national championship. That to me is what your list is. What you're saying by putting Clemson 1 is, look at what they did last year. Trust them. They're going to get better. They're going to be this team. And the reality is, if we're doing polls based on what we're seeing, then that's the wrong way to approach it. So Alabama is your example. Alabama blew out Duke. Alabama blew out South Carolina. Alabama blew out Ole Miss. Like,
great.
Yeah, so they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. If Clemson had blown out North Carolina, then I think you can sit here and defend kind of not looking that great against A&M.
Clemson was up 24-3 on A&M with 9 seconds left. Alabama's defense is an issue. So is Clemson's offense. I just try. Look, I got Alabama at 2. I trust these two teams. I've seen what they can do. I love Ohio State. And I want to toss to Connor, too. Like the Ohio State lovers, they are playing as well as anyone in the country. That doesn't mean I think they're the number one team. Their best win is Nebraska.
So at this point, then you're just saying, yeah, their best win is Nebraska, which is a very equivalent team to North Carolina. They went on the road and beat Nebraska by 41 points, and North Carolina nearly beat Clemson. And again, I'm not saying that's some damning sort of statement on who Clemson is, but I think if the polls are going to be accurate, let's live in this moment. Let's live in the season and not let this poll be basically a reflection of 2018.
So I think the argument for keeping Clemson number 1 is you come into the season with the assumption that this is a really good and talented team that just won the national championship. And what amount of evidence that there are things wrong do you need to see in order to start having them fall? So I guess a question I want to put to Trey is, short of a loss, what could you see from them in the next couple of weeks to think about moving them down?
No, I mean, I was extremely concerned about the North Carolina game. The offensive line had 6 false starts. They're not running the ball, and they're really not throwing it well either. But it's still, they still have the pieces.
So here's,
still have the.
So here's the thing.
They are still the team.
There's a lot of people that believe that preseason polls are counterproductive. They create this perception of a team, and people are just going to give that team the benefit of the doubt throughout the season, and then as it gets to the important stuff like picking a playoff contender, then what's your preseason ranking sometimes becomes very prominent in that decision-making process. And I think that's a fair point. But my response to that would be, let's not get rid of the preseason polls, because those, I think, are important in creating just sort of storylines and us of marketing the game of college football and making it exciting to watch. What needs to be adjusted is how people approach ranking teams during the season. You are taking an approach that I think weighs way too heavily on what they did prior. Again, my list is Ohio State 1. They've blown out Nebraska on the road. This has been a team that's they blew out Indiana 52-10.
They blew out Cincinnati.
They blew out Cincinnati. Those are 3 really good teams. They're 3 quality teams. I'm not gonna say really good. They're 3 quality teams they've blown out. Alabama, I think, has done what they're supposed to do. Okay, LSU, they won on the road against Texas and they've blown everybody out. Then you have Georgia that beat a good Notre Dame team, has blown everyone out. And then you have a Clemson team who's, they've won decisively. They deserve to be in the top 5. And if you're going to put them 4, no problem. If you're going to put them 3, whatever, I guess I can live with it. But they're not. I think they're reminding me right now of Ohio State last year, like a team that everyone's sort of acknowledging there's some flaws here. Let's see if they get it figured out, and we're just going to let them sort of hold serve just because they won it last year. I just think that that's the wrong way to approach evaluating a rankings process.
Look, I know there's a long way to go. We have a lot of football, but a lot of you guys have about 3 to 4 SEC teams in your top 5. So I think it's this a year that we're looking at that we're going to probably have 2 teams from the same conference again.
Oh, well, yeah. I actually think, I don't know about a lock, but I feel pretty good right now about 2 SEC teams making it in.
And which ones?
I don't know which ones. One of the 2, or 2 of the 3, I mean.
Do you feel good about 2 teams being good enough to make it in, or actually the things that need to happen in order for that to play out happen?
I think my reasoning for believing that 2 SEC teams will make it in is that I think Oklahoma trips up somewhere in the Big 12. Now, the more this goes on, the more the less confident I get in that one, because I think Oklahoma's looking pretty good.
And I think the middle pack of the Big 12 is also looking not as good as we expected. Iowa State and Baylor, I do owe Connor an apology later, and I'll get to that. Kansas State and Oklahoma State are kind of a wash. The SEC thing's interesting. I didn't realize until I'm kind of looking at it, Barton's the only one with Georgia in his top 5. So is that something we need Barton to talk about or me and Connor to defend? Because they have a pretty good win. But
they have a great win.
I left them out because I like Oklahoma more. I think Oklahoma is more dynamic and more explosive. And I think we've seen enough from their defense to assume they've made strides. And yes, Georgia beat Notre Dame, but it wasn't the exclamation point I was expecting.
It wasn't.
And I'm going to say this last thing, and I kind of get Connor's take on not having Georgia and ask you about why you've got them 4. I can't help but sort of judge them for what Justin Fields is doing in Columbus.
Okay.
I can't. I'm sort of thinking like they're just they're held back, or they're not being as dynamic or creative. And seeing him take off. Look, I still think Jake Fromm's great. I'm not saying Justin Fields should have been Georgia's starting quarterback last year, but I do think Georgia. It again speaks to the fact that they're probably too conservative in nature offensively to beat an Alabama or an LSU. So,
yeah, I mean, I leave Georgia off, and really, I mean, I thought about putting them in. I didn't have Clemson in my top 5. There were moments where I thought about putting them 1. I think it's partly just a testament to how many good teams there are at the top this year. But I guess kind of in the back of my mind with Georgia is I feel with Alabama, Ohio State, LSU, Oklahoma, I feel like those 4, for me, any one of those might be the best team in the country. I think Georgia might be a top 4 team, but at this point, based on what we've seen, I don't think they're the best team in the country. So that's kind of why I got them out.
Yeah, I mean, I think Georgia is right there. I mean, they're always. I think that's going to be the way they play throughout the year. Is they're going to beat teams, and they're just not built to beat teams in the same fashion that maybe Ohio State is. So I'm not going to hold that against them. But I'm also not going to put them number 1. I'm going to let them earn that spot. And I think that, to your point, the Justin Fields thing is it almost just sort of feels weird. It just sort of sits weird. I get it. But ultimately, Jake Fromm is still the type of quarterback they needed to operate that offense. If Justin Fields was playing right now in Georgia's offense, he would not be having near the success he's having.
I know.
And so I guess, I don't know who that's an indictment on.
I'm not saying it's an indictment on Jake Fromm. I'm saying it's an indictment on Georgia.
Yeah. But I want to make one more point
on
on Ohio State, because people in the comments are saying Ohio State has played no one. I want to be let's be clear here. Ohio State has played, according to S&P Plus, which is kind of
explain
analytic, an analytics focused ranking that is kind of computer generated, similarly RPI in basketball. Cincinnati is ranked 38th. Indiana, which was on the road, ranked 29th. Nebraska on the road ranked 39th. That's 3 top 40 teams in S&P Plus. That's better than anyone on that list, with the exception of LSU and Georgia have those signature wins. But as a whole, Ohio State's played one of the tougher schedules among that top 5.
Should LSU be getting more credit from all of us because they've got the best signature win? They've got the talent profile of a national champion. They've got the offense of a national champion. They've got the Heisman Trophy contender.
See, the way I see it, I'm not going to give. You could make a case. I would be. You have Clemson 1. I feel like you can make a better case for having Auburn 1 than Clemson because of who Auburn has beaten. If you want to go that route, I can.
The whole resume route.
Yeah, I can live with that. I don't think that's the route. I don't prefer going that route because I think, again, LSU is a great example. Yeah, LSU beat Texas, and that's going to loom large down the road. But they also have given up a lot of points to Vanderbilt. Their defense has not looked quite as dominant as, say, Ohio State's. And all that's going to come out in the wash down the road as they do play better teams. So that Texas win isn't going anywhere. We can table that, file it away, and factor that in more heavily down the road. But right now, I'd rather rank a team high like Ohio State that just has shown no flaws.
Just want to dip into the comments real quick. Mike Haig says Alabama's blowouts are all against unranked teams too. So if we want to use that against Ohio State, maybe we should apply it evenly.
No, and I think that's why if I don't have a problem with Alabama being 1 either, because Duke's pretty good. it's the more the season progresses, the better that win looks. South Carolina just rolled over Josh's boys last week. I mean, hey, maybe South Carolina's not that bad.
That's enough.
No, we won't get into that any deeper. I mean,
people are concerned about Alabama's defense, but look, they're going to. Huh?
I'm not buying that.
Well, they're going to score points on anybody.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be like once we get to the big games. This is going to end up this year is going to get really fun really quick.
I think
because of the way these teams play.
Look, I'll sum up like I trust Alabama's defense to get it figured out.
And you trust what Clemson did last year in the national championship.
No, listen. I trust Alabama's defense to get it figured out while its offense takes care of business until then. And the other way around for Clemson, I trust their defense, which has actually played really well. And if you watch the North Carolina game, those North Carolina touchdowns were wild. And Clemson's defense is like making a habit of goal line stands and pressure situations. I think they can hold down the fort, especially in the ACC schedule, while the offense figures it out. So, yeah, maybe this is an in good faith ranking by me, and maybe I look pretty smart in November.
I mean, okay. But all right, I'll stop. But the ranking should not be a prediction.
Well,
shouldn't be a prediction.
It should
be a reflection.
You didn't invent the concept of rankings. I get to take them in my own.
I'm trying to take it back, though. I'm trying to take rankings
back. You are
back.
getting very progressive this year.
Yeah, well, you know what? Hey, that's
you've kind of had an awakening.
It's the year 2000.
You're very woke.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, to like Trey's point, hasn't the committee looked at teams before that they thought were better, or should be better than teams ahead of them in the rankings and put them in the playoff? Didn't that happen in 2014?
The TCU Ohio State. Yeah, like TCU had no business getting left out of the playoff. They just smoked Iowa State, and then Ohio State jumps them. It was a good call. I don't know. I think even if Clemson had lost that game in North Carolina, I'd still feel pretty good about them in the playoff. Seriously.
I mean, that's a whole different discussion.
It is.
But I think I think Clemson. And I've heard people say that they think that Clemson can lose a game and still get in the playoffs this year. I would argue the opposite. I think that because Oklahoma looks better than we thought, LSU looks better than we thought, Ohio State looks better than we thought, and maybe even like Wisconsin or Penn State is better than we thought. I just think there's more quality candidates where we don't have to sort of back in someone that maybe not everyone believes in, similar to Notre Dame last year. I think there's there's too much beef at the top of the list this year to let in a team, especially a Clemson team that's not looked as sharp as we expected early in the year, to let them in with one loss. But we'll see.
One more question and we'll move on. So with Oregon, the way that they looked against Auburn, and now is the Pac-12 out?
Yes.
I mean, is Oregon out?
I'm convinced the Pac-12's out.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're probably out.
Yeah, they're out. There's too many other good teams.
Same argument I just talked about, again, with the national title contenders, like the 6 to 8.
Even Notre Dame.
Yeah, even Notre Dame.
I think would get a nod over Oregon.
Agreed.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to a little hot seat discussion. Rutgers made a big move over the weekend. Let's check it out.
Rutgers has a job opening, but who can save the Scarlet Knights? The once proud program, which played in the first college football game ever, was relevant as recently as the mid-2000s when they peaked at number 7 in the AP Top 25, won 5 bowl games in a 6-year stretch, and produced future Super Bowl champions in Ray Rice and the McCourty twins. But since the departure of Greg Schiano in 2012 and the move to the Big Ten in 2014, it's been a nightmare in North Jersey. Rutgers has basically become the doormat of the Big Ten East. They have to play the likes of Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan State, and Michigan every year. The Scarlet Knights are an unprecedented 7-38 in conference play, and Chris Ash had them careening towards their 5th straight losing season before being fired on Sunday. One of the biggest reasons why Rutgers loses to its opponents by an average of 2 touchdowns per game is because of its inability to recruit in-state. New Jersey has produced 50 4- and 5-star prospects over the past 6 recruiting cycles, but of those 50, Rutgers has kept just 3. By comparison, the other Big Ten teams have come in and taken 29. And there's no light at the end of the tunnel. Ash's replacement will inherit a 2020 class that currently ranks 89th nationally, trailing teams like Rice, Troy, and UMass. While the swirling rumors of a possible Schiano return has Rutgers dreaming of the glory days, the reality may be they've passed you by.
So it's super weird that I think we all sort of grew up in a time that Rutgers was relevant. I know at different ages, but that video, I mean, Rutgers was a relevant national program.
The kicker pointing at the sky cam was such an iconic Rutgers moment.
Jeremy Ito.
That was awesome.
And so now they're dead in the water. Let's quickly spend like a minute or so on the two guys. And then we're going to move into the rest of the hot seat talk because Rutgers was the first to pull the trigger, and I'm excited to see who's next. But could anyone fix Rutgers? Can Greg Schiano fix Rutgers? Can Butch Jones fix Rutgers?
I'm not sure I'm super confident Butch Jones can fix Rutgers. But I think Greg Schiano, he's done it before. He clearly has an appetite to try to do it again. The question for me is, and I don't know the internal workings of Rutgers and their administration, university, but do they have the commitment there to give the resources that Greg Schiano needs, the support that Greg Schiano needs, or whoever the next coach would need to be successful? I think if Greg Schiano got support from the administration and they really prioritize football, this team could be good again. And I think Greg Schiano would prove a lot of people wrong that doubted him, who have doubted him over the last few years. That said, Greg Schiano would be certainly, I think, a really good hire. Butch Jones, I'm a little bit more meh on, but like a Lance Leopold type of hire, head coach of Buffalo, I think that would be the type of guy that would work at Rutgers too. Bottom line is you got to be able to recruit there. And if you can recruit the state and win the state, I think Rutgers has upside. I really do. I mean, I think it's similar to Maryland in that, put a fence around the DMV area, and I know you're not going to get everybody, but get most of them, and that's a pretty good recipe. I think the same can be said for Rutgers. That's a talented high school football state.
Nationally, it just seems like the recruiting powers are starting to sort of entrench their way out and kind of hit the DMV and New Jersey. So Rutgers pulled the trigger. Who's next as far as maybe a midseason hot seat? Maybe, someone gets fired in December. I think you have to start with Charlie Strong at USF. Charlie Strong walked into a very winnable situation after Willie Taggart had gone. And last year they started 7-0.
That was a fraudulent 7-0 though. And it's been proved, and that's been proven to be true.
They've won one game since last mid-October. They're 1-3 right now, and his buyout, because of a weird contract clause with Texas paying a lot of his buyout, is only $200,000. I think, personally, it's only a matter of time before Charlie Strong gets canned. I think it's sad. I like him, as a former Texas coach, but he's just not.
What's happened to him?
No
idea. He was rolling.
No idea.
Maybe he just caught the Teddy Bridgewater wave and just got, kind of hit it right at Louisville because. This is a couple. I mean, South Florida is a place you should be able to win. Yeah. And I mean, look, they did win, but a lot of that was remnant success that has since tailed off. I mean,
it was absolutely Willie Taggart's
South
success.
Florida is getting worse by the year, by the week, by the game, and that's, I think, the troubling thing. And if that's where you look at South Florida and you're like, where does this turn around? I mean, it just keeps on sinking lower. Now they're going up to UConn this weekend as an 11-point favorite. If they cover that one, it feels like that's going to be the first time they covered in 2 years.
If they lose that game, I bet he's gone by Sunday. Justin Fuente at Virginia Tech, his seat is in Fuego. I
like that, in Fuente and Fuego.
Yeah, that's a little Spanish spice by me. I did grow up in Texas. $12.5 million after some point in December. That's just probably too much, right, guys?
It's a lot.
Because you want to talk about getting worse by the week.
Yeah,
they beat Old Dominion and Furman.
They looked horrible the other night. It was awful. They looked so bad.
Oh, on Friday night when we thought we were going to get some good Friday night. Yeah.
Awful.
Total, yeah.
That team also looked like part of the problem is obviously the win-loss record, but how they've looked, how they've lost, how they've won. You mentioned Furman, Old Dominion. I mean, Old Dominion, they're lucky not to have lost that game. And Furman, FCS program, was winning that game through most of the game. And it wasn't even like a talented looking FCS team. They just were out. They were just beating Virginia Tech. And so I think when you look at some of the reporting that's been done around that program, the locker room culture was horrific. It still must be pretty bad. But at this point, I don't know that you can blame it on the players you inherited. Like, you should have been able to instill your culture by now What are we on? Is this year 4?
This is year 4. The only time they were, it's gone down every year when he had Frank Beamer's players.
Yeah.
Frank Beamer left the cupboard pretty full. I know we say this about so many mid-market teams, but college football is better when Virginia Tech is good. And I know they can't all be good at the same time because that's just not how the college football ecosystem works. But this is disappointing. I'd like to see them get a little bit better. Clay Helton, guys, do we think anything's happening here after the season? We don't know the buyout because it's a private school. It was rumored to be $15 million last year. So it's probably significantly less. They don't even have an AD. But
we talked about this a little bit. It feels like there's no reason to rush this.
Yeah.
I think Clay Helton, are they going to finish 10-2? Doubtful.
Right.
And so if you're ready to move on, you probably have grounds to go ahead and move on if they finish 8-4. And that looks, this team probably is about an 8-4 team. They're probably, maybe they're 7-5. I doubt they get down to that 6-6 world. I think this team's better than that. But I also doubt that they went out as well. So I think that whatever the new athletic director, and they're in the midst of finding a new one right now, whenever that decision comes, I think he can do what he wants. And because of that, I don't think that this, they need to find a decision maker. They've got the grounds to make a move based on what happened last year. Like, they can do this. They can take their time in making a decision here.
Last year we made conference predictions preseason, and in the Big Ten I had put Lovie Smith on my hot seat. It was clearly a year too soon, and you told me that then. They were committed to him. You got to think that commitment's starting to waver. Yeah,
I would think so. I think there's still – I can still see a scenario where this team turns things around. I could still see there's some wins on that Illinois schedule left if they show improvement. Now, if they don't get them, then I think that's your litmus test.
They're not recruiting well. When we were putting that Rutgers video together, they're like 89th in recruiting. I know they're restocking with the transfer.
Yeah, it's funny, because
this is weird.
They actually had a decent recruiting class last year for some reason, and they certainly had a lot of success in the transfer portal. But this is a team that, now that they have a quarterback, they've got and frankly, Oluwale Bedeku, who's one of the most productive tackle for lost guys in the country. He's got another year eligibility after this, so he could even come back. There's some foundation for future success. But you look at their schedule. Purdue looks very winnable. Mm-hmm. Rutgers looks obviously very winnable. So I think there's 2 that you have to have. And then can they beat Minnesota this weekend? Can they beat Northwestern? 6 wins is not out of the realm of possibility.
Illinois should take 6 wins.
Yeah, I think and if they just land on 4, I don't know. It's hard to argue this is going to get much better.
All right, I want to move on to, I guess, the topic of the week. California passed a bill, and it was signed this week by the governor. Now athletes can profit for their likeness. Other states are starting to look into this. Florida, I think, is they either signed it or about to sign it.
They're proposed it.
15 other states are looking into it now. So this is bad news for the NCAA.
Good.
Yes, I agree. I just don't care. Just bring back college football, NCAA football. That's all I care about.
You care about.
That's all I care about.
Yeah.
But
I care about the athletes.
I'm happy about.
I care about the student athletes.
I'm happy for the players as well.
I want to question the premise that this is bad news for the NCAA, because given that this is where things are moving, this honestly seems like such a cleaner way to do it. Like a couple years ago, we were talking about how do you figure out how much the school should pay the football player compared to the lacrosse player, and this is all just independently market determined. The school doesn't really have to be involved in determining who gets paid what. They're just there to kind of be a regulator.
That's an interesting point, but the NCAA is surely not enjoying this PR.
The problem here is the NCAA is just digging their heels in, and they're acting like they can fight this and they can push back, and this is coming. Like it or not, if you're the NCAA, this is coming, and it's going to either tear the NCAA apart, or you can adapt. And I think what's disappointing is the inevitability of this grows by the week. If the NCAA would just say, we understand, the California is passing this bill, several other states are going to follow. We are going to start working with schools, with the committees, and figure out solutions to regulating this and creating a structure that this works within. And so, like, just do it. Like, just get on board and let's figure out how this thing can work. And I think that it's important because I don't know how much people follow this, but like, this is important to note. And Connor, you pointed at this. This is not a bill that calls on colleges to pay players. That's not what this is. All this is allows kids to profit off their likeness, basically accept money outside of the university as the market deems fit. You can, sign an endorsement deal for a car dealership. You can, accept a free lunch from the local sub shop because they liked you on your game on Saturday. Like, these are things that I think are no-brainers. And yes, it creates a new reality that's hard for people to get past and hard for people to conceptualize. Like, oh, like this guy's gonna be driving a Cadillac and all he's doing is playing football. And he's
Cadillac,
an Escalade.
Cadillac.
An Escalade.
You know, like my grandfather?
Or Escalade's not like hot anymore?
Oh, an Escalade, sure. But I was just talking about like
whatever. Man, like the point being is like, I think people have a hard time conceptualizing that these guys could get like hundreds of thousands of dollars if they wanted to, and that's somehow a bad thing. And it's just not. Like, that's not a bad thing for a kid, for the market to deem a kid worth whatever.
I'm a big fan of this, by the way. I'm just going to be like I'm going to point out two holes I kind of see.
Yeah.
So when I was a student newspaper reporter back in the day, I did a story. Texas had a quarterback named Garrett Gilbert, who was a former 5-star, ended up being a massive bust. But they sold Gilbert's number 7 jersey at the University Co-op, and by the time he got benched in week 3, they couldn't give these things away. They were slashing prices 50% off. I did a story. The athletic department got very upset that I would embarrass Gilbert like this, but like 5 locations across the city of Austin were just stuck with number 7 jerseys. What happens then? That's interesting. Another thing here, and again, I'm a big fan of, I want students to receive compensation for if they can. Like, the likenesses is great. I want the video game to come back, sure, selfishly. These kids are extremely busy, though. And look, Barton, every year, every winter, we have the luxury of spending New Year's in San Antonio at the Army All-American Bowl, or the All-American Bowl now. And these kids, they're 17, they're 18. They need literally 6 handlers to walk them through an hour-long station to make sure they get checked in, get their pads, get weighed in, talk to us, and take photos. So now you're telling Najee Harris he's got to wake up, and be at the Alabaster Mercedes dealership in 45 minutes for his paid appearance. Who's going to help these guys manage all this?
I don't know. For $10,000, I bet they.
Who's going to help all these kids manage this, guys?
Okay. So here, a couple of things. First of all, the first point on the Garrett Gilbert jersey, I think is a fair point. But look, that happens in the NFL all the time. And then they have flash sales to give away these jerseys or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a decision that business has to make. And all right, are we going to expose ourselves to marketing like this one jersey, or are we just going to market like the 20 jersey for the season 2020, like just like
I'll
the
tell you
basic
right
generic
now, no
jersey.
one's buying that.
Exactly.
No, okay.
That's my point.
Okay.
And so like that's just that's what you have to deal with in any business. Like shops that sell NFL jerseys deal with the same thing with players get traded. The second point I think is very fair, and I think that makes that's going to be something that teams have to figure out. Maybe they have to hire someone to help manage these kids. But again, like this is just if kids can't get their academics done, if that's just like an obstacle that they can't overcome, these are all things that we'll see adjustments. Like we'll see kids, maybe like that's a real like balancing act that we have to manage through. Is like, all right, can you keep kids eligible? Can you keep them focused on the task at hand with all these sponsorship deals? And I think the other thing that's important too. There's a lot of people saying like I just look in the comments and there's people throwing all the, bullet points out there. Right. It's bad for schools that don't have the big boosters. It's already bad for schools that don't have big boosters.
Like you're going to Alabama.
Yeah, like I mean, Tulane's not going to out-recruit LSU as is. Maybe some Tulane booster decides to set up a outstanding name and likeness program that creates a lot of revenue for players, and suddenly Tulane could be a team that can compete. how many people other than the few skill players are going to make anything? Great point. Not many. I think that's probably the biggest point in this is very few people will actually move the needle to the point where they make significant money off of this deal. And so most guys would be like me in college who, hey, I can get a free sandwich and not technically becoming an NCAA violation, or
maybe all you do is tweet headed to Jimmy John's.
Or I can put my assigned jersey on eBay and catch a little extra scratch for it.
Yeah.
Like that's the extent of what most people will actually be able to make on it. It just cuts out this sort of red tape nonsense and allows guys to just sort of live a real existence that most other students can live and not be scared of being ineligible.
And the people who have a lot of money that they want to spend to make their favorite football program better are doing that through booster donations for facilities and whatever under the table payments are going on. It's just, is there a more direct and efficient way that we can make this? I think it's probably better for the student athlete if they have money that they need to buy groceries, support their family, whatever, than having a slide at the football facility.
Well, and I think this is another point here. Like, let's say boosters decide that I'm just going to start paying guys, promising them these contracts, get them to come to school, and let's just say I think this is going to happen almost not ever, but let's just say for the sake of argument, hey, Jimmy, I'm going to give you $1 million to sponsor my car dealership if you come to school here. Kid gets $1 million, sponsors the car dealership. Kid ends up being a trash player. Mm-hmm. Kid's up getting in trouble off the field. Kid's not very good. Transfers out. That's $1 million down the drain. You think that guy's going to be jumping to shell out cash to the next 17-year-old so-called next big thing? They might find that the better return on investment is to just go back to giving it to the athletic department and letting them build out the facilities, letting them name a building after them, whatever, as opposed to playing in a much more volatile game of literally paying recruits. I think you'll see probably more systematic, just jobs being handed out to recruits that maybe are a little, the pay is a little bit better than the market value, just as sort of almost like a reward, a carrot for playing for Big State U. But I think the idea that boosters are just going to start shelling out money to players is doesn't take into account that is a little bit of a shaky investment when boosters are typically pretty smart financially. Like they're boosters for a reason. They've done well with money. They're not just going to give away a bunch of money to a bunch of high school kids.
I just think they're going to make their most money, like say Tua on a bye week going to Bojangles with a big event. I mean, he can make like $5 an autograph or something, like $10 an autograph. How much is he going to make? Yeah. A ton. Yeah. So I think that's where they're going to get a ton of their money from.
And I saw Dan Wetzel did a nice story where he sort of explored some of the possibilities where this could go. Like one was the backup kicker, creates a GoFundMe account. If someone gets hurt, rolls in, kicks a field goal, hey, to win the game, hey guys, help me out. Any old just sort of sidewalk fan can just throw $10 at him, and that could get a pretty big number pretty quick. And who loses there? Who loses if some kid gets $100,000 for making a big shot based on just a bunch of fans being fired up about it? Like, I'm good with it. Like, we're all enjoying watching them play. I've got a job because all these guys are playing college football. You've got something to do on a Saturday afternoon because these guys are playing football. So I don't see who the loser is in this one.
All right. So before we move to questions, our buddy Kevin Boiler has a show on Monday called Roll Call. He takes your phone calls, questions, and stuff like that. He actually gave us an interesting voicemail from Ed in Orlando. We're going to play that and answer it for you right now.
This is Ed from Orlando. I want to talk about the Florida Gators dropping from number 9 to number 10 in the AP poll.
You take it.
All right. So the question was.
I got it.
Okay. All right.
Should the Florida Gators have dropped from number 9 to 10 in the AP poll? Yeah, I don't care.
So okay.
No. Yes, they should have. They're not any good.
All right, but this contradicts the same argument you make with Clemson.
What?
Your Twitter mentions are about open. I mean, they're not that. They're good. They're undefeated.
This contradicts your Clemson argument, though.
How?
Tell me how it doesn't.
Because I didn't see Florida with Kyle Trask last year win the national championship.
Did you see Florida blow out Michigan in whatever bowl that was last year?
Yeah, with Felipe Franks. Did you see Felipe Franks in Florida struggle in week 0 against a bad Miami team? Should have lost to a Kentucky team with a backup quarterback. I'm not here for your Florida is good takes. We talked about this in week 1 when we said, how come we're judging Felipe Franks, but we're not judging about Trevor Lawrence? I was like, well, Trevor Lawrence won the national championship. I'm fine with Florida dropping. Fine with it. I think they were very overrated at number 9.
See, I also think Florida's overrated. In fact, when I turned in I do a weekly top 50 that I turn in CBS every week, and I think I have Florida like 16th or something. Like I don't think they're that. I think they're good. I don't think they're a top 10 team. But I also think that if you're going to argue Clemson should be number 1, then Florida's 5-0. They haven't lost yet. They're top 10 preseason. They should probably still be top 10 preseason if you're living by that
because they
train of
lost
thought.
their starting quarterback.
Connor, how are we looking on questions?
Yeah, we've got some questions. Travis wants to know, does this scandal put Jeremy Pruitt on the hot seat? And in case to kind of catch you up on that, Jeremy Pruitt, there was a body cam from a UTPD officer released. Jeremy Banks, Tennessee linebacker, is being detained, calls Pruitt, and this call is happening on speakerphone, and Pruitt appears to have been woken up and is kind of confused, and at one point says he's never had to deal with this crap at the 4 other places he's coached, and then Banks is not suspended despite being kind of hostile towards the police officers in this video, so I guess people are kind of criticizing Pruitt right now.
So Wes Rucker said last week on The Boiling Point with Kevin Boiler that it would take an off-field scandal for Jeremy Pruitt to lose his job as Tennessee careens toward a 3-9 season. This was narrowly avoided. I think Tennessee did a nice job PR-wise yesterday of preparing Jeremy Pruitt, who's not great with the media, for his teleconference call on the SEC, or maybe this was 2 days ago, lost track. He said, you know what, I appreciate the officers, told a good story about explaining it, but this was close. This was close to blowing up in his face.
This is a boring season if we're going to call this a scandal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think this is...
This is just football.
This is just football. This is SEC football.
Oh.
You know? Hey,
what's funny is the Tennessee fans are like, God, this is no big deal. But the other fans are like, how, they disrespected the police.
I mean, it was a bad look. Like it's a bad look for Jeremy Banks. It's a bad. I mean, but I don't necessarily think it's a bad look for Jeremy Pruitt because, he literally it's 3:30 in the morning. He's trying to figure out what's going on. The kid didn't do anything to get arrested, but he had a warrant out for his arrest because he didn't appear in court. And so I think Jeremy Pruitt is just thinking like, what's going on here? I mean, the kid didn't even do anything. You're going to take him in handcuffs? Like, So I think the whole situation is not one to wring your hands about too much. In fact, I don't even think this is like a red mark. Like I'm not ready to throw this in the negative column for Jeremy Pruitt. It was a late night. He was a little groggy, trying to figure out what's going on.
If you haven't actually watched the video, I would encourage you to seek it out because I think you can kind of pull some of the things he says out of context and kind of make this look bad. And I've seen some media outlets do that, but in the context, it genuinely seems like he's trying to figure out what's going on and is trying to act in the best interest of the kid, whether he deserves it or not, based on the way he's acted. Isn't it?
If you want to put Jeremy Banks on the hot seat, then that's fine. But Jeremy Pruitt's okay.
What else you got?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Zach wants to know if you guys are concerned about your Huskers, your Nebraska Cornhuskers.
So are they 3-2? Are they 3-2? I've had some people tell me that we're like the only reason that Nebraska got preseason hype, and I appreciated that compliment. I don't think we have that much influence. Yes, we love Scott Frost. I look forward to talking to him in December on the early signing day show. I'm slightly concerned. I think this is my measuring stick this weekend on whether or not I need to be concerned. Northwestern.
If they lose to Northwestern, and even if I'm just even going to say if it's a sloppy 4-quarter game that they barely survive, then I'm concerned. But it's also about like concerned relative to what? Relative to the preseason expectations they're going to win the Big Ten West. Like I actually never had those expectations. I thought that they could be second or third. I never thought they would win it. I think I predicted them third.
I remember on a nice July day though when we did Barton Makes Picks, you had them at one point knocking off Ohio State.
Did I?
They haven't met our expectations. This is very clear, but we're gonna give them some more time.
No doubt. Yeah. I mean, look, this is not an impressive team, but I think when we talk about where they were, like the next step forward is like a 7-5 year. That's still very much in play.
Next question comes from Morgan, who thinks, with so many good teams this year, are we going to end up spending a lot of time talking about whether the playoff should be expanded?
Always.
Probably.
Always.
Definitely.
I mean, look, you're going to have one SEC team at least be really PO'd. You're going to have a mad Notre Dame team. You're going to have a mad Pac-12 commissioner again. You might have a mad Big 12 team. What if you have a one-loss Wisconsin, or two? I guess Wisconsin plays Ohio State in the. There's going to be a lot of upset teams here.
No,
December is going to be ugly.
I think this is shaping up to me to be maybe that year that starts to get the ball moving towards an expanded playoff, because there's going to be someone or two, maybe three teams left out that look capable of winning it. I think this will be, and we got a long way to go. I could be proven wrong here. But I think this will be the first year where the potential national title winner is left out. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I guess you could call it 2014 or the TCU year. Like that's, I guess you can maybe point to that year. But I just think, given how good some of these teams look, it's going to be a tough pill to swallow to be watching from the sideline.
I guess my final point is this: in our top fives, the defending national champion is fifth for you and not in Connor's top five if you want to talk about the number of quality teams.
Yeah.
Curtis Hobson wants to know, why does LSU get so much more credit for beating Texas by 7 than UGA does for beating Notre Dame by 6?
On the road versus at home, I think. And not only
Plus
that.
Texas is better than Notre Dame.
And I think people view Texas as a more talented team than Notre Dame.
They should.
I don't know that that's true though. I think when Notre Dame, I think people viewed it that way going into the game. And I think with the way Notre Dame played changed the way a lot of people viewed Notre Dame. I think the big difference is a home game at night, on the road for Notre Dame versus a home game at night at home for Texas.
Give me Notre Dame on a neutral field. I have a lot of frustration to take out on Notre Dame fans. Oh, don't even get me going. I don't want to have a boiling point. I don't want to have a boiling point because that'll get me going. So, okay.
Dude, you're turning red.
Texas, there's no question, is way more talented than Notre Dame. No, not today. Not today.
Wow. Give me a neutral. I would love that. Give me a neutral site. Give me
today.
Give me Notre Dame.
Oh, God.
Notre Dame.
I'm red.
Connor, any more questions?
Yeah. Michael Neville says, Willie Taggart, if that guy's on the hot seat, I don't know who is. FSU is a top 10 talent team from a recruiting standpoint. So that's the question.
I think, look, if you look around these year 2 coaches, whether it's Jeremy Pruitt, Chip Kelly, Chad Morris, there's a bunch of them that aren't really getting it rolling. I think if you look around the country, like there's reason to believe Florida State is starting to figure it out.
Yeah.
I mean, they just handled.
I think so too.
They just handled NC State. I mean, they still have talent. Willie Taggart may have found a little something, a little lane here.
Yeah, 2 nice wins over Louisville and NC State. Got a bye, then Clemson, but then Wake, Syracuse, Miami, BC, Alabama State. So that's not a bad run-in before Florida in the final week of the season. Let's see. Let's find another one here. Is Dabo doing to the ACC what Coach Saban did in the SEC? This is from Michael Neville also, meaning their ability to build a program causes mass coaching carousel inside their own conference.
I don't know. I mean, it's hard for me to compare that because I mean, I think Nick Saban took down monsters, and Florida State, I guess you can point to Florida State as a monster that Clemson has sort of dethroned and crippled. But aside from that, I'm not going to put Miami on Clemson. I'm up at Miami on Miami. And aside from that, like this is just a conference that I think has itself to blame for sort of slipping. I mean, it's a fair question. I'm not there yet.
They've made a lot of coaching hires the last few off seasons that really, quite frankly, haven't panned out.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, guys. We'll get to some more questions and comments later in the show. Kevin Boiler talks to Brandon Marcello in this week's Boiling Point.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Boiling Point, where we put our experts to the test by asking them a few pointed questions. The Auburn Tigers are a perfect 5-0 on the season with a pair of wins against ranked opponents. With me today to discuss their SEC chances is Brandon Marcello of Auburn Undercover on 247Sports. Brandon, a lot of people are pointing to LSU as the SEC West team with the best chance to knock off Alabama this season, but so far, Auburn has been right there with them. Has Auburn been overlooked as a true contender to win the SEC?
I think a little bit, but I also think a lot of experts are just looking at the road ahead for Auburn and thinking, well, there's 1 or 2 losses at least there. They still have 4 top 10 opponents, including this week at Florida. So everybody's kind of assuming and projecting things. Auburn also has to go to LSU, where LSU has not lost to Auburn since 1999. Having said that, Alabama's defense and LSU's defense have shown some cracks. They've allowed a lot of points. Auburn's defense, not so much. So I think the thing that might be overlooked here is that maybe Auburn has a better defense than the 2 top contenders in the West, and Alabama and LSU. And I don't think a lot of people would have said that going into the year. And because of that, I think Auburn should be taken as an SEC contender because they have a contender defense and the offense continues to grow.
You can point to the strength of that defense, Brandon, but the advantage teams like Alabama, LSU, and even Georgia in the East have over Auburn is experience at the quarterback position. Does Bo Nix have what it takes to lift this team to the top of the SEC as a true freshman?
It'll be difficult, certainly. He's got a tough road ahead of him. But I think what was great for him is he was thrown in the fire immediately in the season opener against Oregon, led a tremendous comeback, and, of course, threw that 26-yard game-winning touchdown pass against the Ducks that a lot of Auburn fans will remember for a while. And he's gotten better game to game since then. And this past week against Mississippi State, he was the first quarterback in Auburn history since Cam Newton in 2010 in the SEC championship game to throw for 300 yards and run for 50. And that's what's really got this offense going a little bit is Bo Nix running the football. That wasn't really something they were doing the first 2 to 3 games. He's running more zone read. It's opened up the offense a little bit, and it's taken some pressure off of Bo Nix, even though he's touching the ball more and having to run it a little bit because things are opening up a little bit more in the passing game as he runs the ball a little bit more.
Brandon, thank you so much for stopping by. Number 7 Auburn will be put to the test in Gainesville this weekend with a game against number 10 Florida on Saturday. For the latest on that matchup and more, follow Brandon on Twitter and read his work over at Auburn Undercover on 247Sports.
All right, thanks, fellas. So, guys, let me ask you this. Is this Auburn defense good enough to win the West? Good enough to maybe win the SEC and even go further?
Well, I mean, yeah, the Auburn defense is absolutely good enough. I think the question is it good enough to carry the offense, right? Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah.
And I think the thing that gives me some optimism with this Auburn team, when you look at Gus Malzahn teams, there's 4 factors at play offensively that have to be there for them to have success. A mobile quarterback, a deep threat that's a play-action post guy that they can throw it to down the field, a downfield north-south running back, and an east-west running threat. All right? They've got those 4 things. I think the deep threat can be kind of interchangeable. I think Boobie Whitlow is sort of good enough as your kind of workhorse back. The 2 keys to this are that Bo Nix is that athletic quarterback. He's shown that he's improving and progressing week by week, and he gives you everything you want to do offensively. But I think the other big part of this is Anthony Schwartz as that horizontal run threat. And even though they may just hand it to him once or twice a game, I really think that opens up a lot for what this offense can do. So I don't know that I'm there yet to answer your question, like that they can win the SEC, but I'm warming up to it every week. And I really think that defense is special. And I think that sort of 4-pronged Gus Malzahn's system has not. There's been a piece or two missing each of the last few years. This year, I think all 4 pieces are there, which is encouraging for an Auburn fan.
Good for them using Anthony Schwartz, the fastest man in football. Broken hand in the preseason, I believe. Hasn't really been able to catch, but they're finding ways to get on the ball. So Connor's got him in his top 5. We're going to find out this weekend. It's my turn to segue. This is my favorite segment of the show every single week. This is Josh's Big Bet, where our World Series of Poker star, who returned to Nashville with $22,000 to his name,
Big guy.
puts $22,000 every week on the line. I'm going to give you an envelope of a line. You haven't seen this yet. You are our SEC guy. We got a lot of things to figure out.
Short stacked again.
So,
Well, yeah, this would be now, I would be getting staked.
Oh, we're staking you.
Yes.
We're staking
so
you 22.
Josh is clearly in the red. Josh, when you open that envelope and read out the bet, you have 15 seconds to deliberate and declare your pick.
Ready?
So let's get it going. Open that puppy up.
You're kind of an SEC East guy. So
We wanted to put something.
we want to mix it up a little bit.
Oregon State at UCLA. UCLA's a 5.5 point favorite.
Start the clock.
Yeah. Let's see what you got, big guy.
Oh boy.
I don't know. UCLA minus 5.5. I don't know.
I kind of thought that might stump him. He said yesterday, he goes, don't make it anything weird, but I did.
That's weird.
You know what? We need to get you out of your rut. Maybe you're overthinking this a little bit with
Yeah.
this SEC East stuff. Let's get out west. Take a little
Yeah.
trip to wine country.
Yeah.
You know, on the
I'll
way
get
out there, and
Yeah.
Get out there.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, fellas. All right, it's time for some hot takes. Take a Palooza time. Trey's got a little mystery.
No, I
take.
just forgot to fill it out on the Google Doc. It's not a mystery to Colin, our show's producer. I have left each Saturday night's viewing experience feeling sort of unfulfilled. I don't think this season has been that fun so far.
That's your hot take?
That's my hot take. And I wanted to kind of see what you thought about it. I think there's been 3 good games.
Well, you guys have already been in the
Texas
argument
LSU,
about
Clemson,
this.
North Carolina, Georgia, Notre Dame, I guess, was like, I was fine, but like I wasn't interested.
It's been a disappointing day out of you, Trey.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Anyway.
First of all, are you not done with your breakdown? Keep going.
No, I think the season's going to be a lot better, and it's great that we have 8 teams who are potential champions.
Yeah.
That's the only upside of this. I think we've had some big games that haven't delivered. Ohio State, Nebraska says hello. And we've had some weeks that really haven't delivered either. So that's my take.
Very average Joe fan day out of you. You know, just being unable to comprehend Notre Dame's talent level increase. Secondly, sticking with chalk and just carrying over Clemson's national championship throughout the season, just until they lose. Doesn't matter if they, barely beat Charlotte. And now we're here where you think that it's been a boring season just because we haven't had a bunch of top 25 nail biters. Hey, Michigan, Indiana was a good game last week. You check that one out?
Michigan State, Indiana?
Michigan State, Indiana.
Check that one out.
Yeah. How
I haven't
about?
seen Michigan,
How about? Did
Indiana.
you see the Tulane game against Houston? That was a wild one.
Saw that, yes.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't always have to be the Blue Bloods that are making some ways for it to be a fun season. So.
It'd be nice if it was.
Thank
Well,
you.
yeah, for you guys.
Oh, God.
For you guys.
Yeah.
Kind of low.
The fact that
lowbrow,
we have the same perspective makes me a little bit
kind
concerned.
of Joe fans.
Okay.
All right, you want mine?
Yes, please.
All right, my take of Palooza. And this is, okay. This season will produce 6 first-round quarterbacks in the spring.
Name them.
Oh, gosh, I had to name them.
What?
Well, I mean, I know they're
Why
there.
did you make the take? You just throw out 6?
No, I know they're there. I just didn't write them down. I just didn't
I
write
can
them
do
down.
it.
So let's see. We got
Tua,
Jalen Hurts,
Herbert.
Tua, Herbert. We've got Jake Fromm. We've
Burrow.
got Joe Burrow. And the one more is
No.
perhaps
Fields
Jacob Easton.
Okay.
Jacob Easton.
All right. Well, I'm glad you can name them.
Yeah, and so, and look, the reality
best
is,
one?
the reality is, I think that probably Needs will push 1 or 2 of those guys out of the first round.
Yeah.
But I think that's. Oh, and you know who another one is? Josh Love or Jordan Love.
Jordan Love. See him this weekend against
Utah
LSU.
State.
Who's the best one? Tua?
I think Tua probably would be sort of my lean for going number 1, but we got we got a little bit of a competition there.
All right.
Be fun.
Connor, do you got any more questions you want to follow up with?
Yeah, we got some questions. Michael Seltzer says, Tennessee is going to be the talk after they send Georgia home with the loss, and all of you can kiss my grits. Any path to a Tennessee win over Georgia?
He said
No.
Tennessee?
Yeah.
Wow.
No. I picked Tennessee to beat Auburn correctly last year, so I feel like I have some sway here, but no.
Yeah, it's hard for me to envision that. Hard to envision what that looks like. I don't see it. I could see a cover, but even that's kind of like
I thought Tennessee was going to cover versus Florida.
Yeah, I did too.
Dangerous trap.
I thought Tennessee had a chance to beat Florida, and they really, if Guarantano had played a little better in the first half, that game may have changed. The trajectory of that game might have changed, but it didn't happen.
Sorry, toggled away. Van Waits wants to know, do you think the reason Tua is playing later in games this year is because of a Heisman push?
Oh,
That's a good question.
They probably just need him. The defense isn't as stout. They don't have Jalen Hurts. So it's like, okay, look. Last year, keep to a healthy one and get Jalen Hurts involved and incentivized for staying was probably number one as far as Tua exiting games early in the fourth quarter. Let's be totally honest. And the defense isn't as good this year. I think Nick Saban's going to be a little bit more reluctant to start taking his foot off the gas early.
But I also think you're going to see, because there are these really good teams, and I'm not saying this is necessarily factoring into Saban's thinking, but it might be factoring into his subconscious, is that you are going to have to win impressively this year as the season progresses, given that so many other teams are. So I'll be curious if he just, maybe throws one extra series more than he would otherwise, just to keep his foot on the gas.
Howard Lerner wants to know whether we think it'll be bad for team harmony to have some players making big money off of their name, image, and likeness. Will that be an issue in the locker room?
First, I thought there's a team harmony.
I thought that too. I didn't understand what's going on either. But no. So it's another point that people are throwing out. I mean, there's constantly inequality on rosters, whether it goes to guys that are on the front of the poster that's put up for promotional purposes throughout campus, whether it's the guy that's doing the game day interviews, whether it's just the guy whose parents are richer and so he drives a nicer car. Like, nothing changes here. This is still civilization, where there's just sort of tiers of success. Who's more fortunate than others, and the fact that someone's getting more money doesn't change anything. It just creates another. And look, and then, hey, there's maybe some rosters, some locker rooms that don't handle it well. I'm not saying that won't happen either, but I think that's why this is all corrects on its own, in the sense that hey, there might be a team that is really successful because no one's got any smart marketing deals. No one has is getting a bunch of money on the side, and they're all just dialed in and focused on the task at hand. And that's okay too. Good for that team. That's going to be fun for that fan base. And then maybe those guys get some good deals after the season.
Maybe if you want to think about team harmony in the other way, a lot of these guys could be having a lot more. If Tua's making thousands of dollars, he's taking his guys out. They're not worried about going to the bars with only $40 to their name, like I was in college. So, yeah.
All right, let's get to the fan of the week. It is Doug Gwinner. His question is, this could be a year where the SEC beats each other up and we will have no undefeated teams. Then what?
I guess it could be, but no undefeated teams in the SEC, I think, is certainly possible. And maybe, maybe no undefeated teams nationally. That's certainly possible. But I also think that it's hard for me to envision Oklahoma or Ohio State or Clemson, none of those teams rolling through undefeated, and it's just it feels like one of those SEC teams will be able to make it through as well. But that's certainly in the cards. It's certainly reasonable.
All right, thank you for your question, Doug. All right, let's move on to our picks. Just want to say your boy went 9-1 last week. He's back in the race.
I was horrible.
It's been a chalky week.
Oh my gosh.
Look at that.
I like how just Josh every
games.
week brags and he's just never number one. Congrats on going 9-1,
I've been
Josh.
I've been trashing my picks the last few weeks. I went 6-4 last week.
Feels good to be on top.
Connor, do you have some news on a contest?
I do. If you want to pick along with us, I've dropped a link in the chat on Facebook and YouTube for CBS Pick'em Challenge. You can pick along with us and enter to win $1,000. So if you, and the link and the password's all in the chat. So check it out if you want to pick with us. So are we getting started now with picks?
Yeah, let's start. Okay. Let's go. Number 18, UCF, 3.5-point favorite at Cincinnati.
All right. So yeah, I went UCF here. Traveling to Nippert, tough place to play. Good Cincinnati team, but I think UCF's going to be better on both sides of the ball.
UCF back on a nationally televised game. Want to impress people. UCF.
This is actually the best team UCF has played. I know they lost to Pitt, but this is a good principle to stick by is weeknight home underdogs. I like that principle here. Cincinnati blacking out the stadium, painting the field. They're going to put everything into this game, this opportunity. I think that Cincinnati comes out with a great game plan and wins it.
Mr. 9-1 will take Central Florida. Air Force, 2.5-point favorite at Navy.
Yeah, I mean, I could tell you I had some principled reason for picking Navy, but I just went with the underdog in a toss-up to increase my odds of being the only one who picked them. So
Air Force blew them out last year, and Vegas has Air Force as a favorite, so therefore I'm going Air Force.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's a tough trek, cross country, crossing a couple time zones, but I think this Air Force team, particularly because of their ability to throw the football a little bit if they need to, I just like where they're at here. I'm going to go Air Force as well.
I like Air Force too. Saw them play Colorado the other week. Like them a lot. Baylor at Kansas State. Kansas State's a 2-point favorite, excuse me.
Yeah, I think Baylor's probably the better team, but I think coming after that big Iowa State win, maybe a bit of a letdown situation and traveling to Manhattan, so I'm going with the Wildcats.
I'm going K-State, but I'm going to use this portion to offer an apology to Connor, who I roasted last week for picking Baylor to beat Iowa State. I said that was the worst pick in the history of Connor's picks. Obviously, not only was I wrong, I also look like a massive idiot for picking Maryland to beat Penn State, and they lost 59-0. Last week was really, really, really bad for me on the show. I apologize, Connor. Go Wildcats.
It's an odd hill to die on the
It really was.
Baylor Iowa State.
Yeah, such an outburst.
I'm rolling with Baylor. Really believe in Matt Rule. I think this Kansas State team's pretty good too, but I think there's an advantage at the quarterback position. Charlie Brewer is I think a really good player, and I think that was more of a survival game last week, and maybe they can gain some confidence from it this week. I think Kansas State could win it, but I'm picking Baylor.
I am going to roll with the Wildcats. Maryland is a 13.5-point favorite at Rutgers.
Yeah, I mean, Maryland's obviously not in the best mood right now after getting blown out by Penn State, but whatever problems Maryland has right now, they are not worse than what's going on at Rutgers. So I'm going Terps.
Yeah, we wanted to pick the worst game of the week. We found it. I appreciate that Rutgers could have a really big game under interim coach Nunzio Campanelli, but I'm going Maryland, who really needs this one.
Central Florida, UConn is probably the worst game of the week.
South Florida, yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah,
maybe. What did I say?
Well, worst Power 5 game, maybe.
Yeah.
Look, this is probably crazy. This is probably stupid. I probably shouldn't be doing this, but I am picking Rutgers here. This is, Maryland's pretty beat up on the offensive line. That's been a group that is struggling right now. I think that they, the quarterback play has lost all confidence in Josh Jackson. This is a Rutgers team. Got a little dead cat bounce back in them right now with the new head, with the interim coach. I think they got something to play for here, and I think they prove some people wrong and find a way to beat Maryland.
Did anyone else see that? He was like, this is my soapbox moment. If I nail this pick, everyone's going to make a really big deal.
I don't think anyone's
I kind of saw a little gleam in his eye, flicker of the hair. Everyone watch out. Here
that's
is my
actually not true.
Pick.
It's like, don't even bank that. Like, I don't.
I saw it. It was Purdue, Ohio State.
No, I'll take the Cincinnati. You want to clip that one and spread that around, I'll take it. But this is just purely, trying to find a tallest midget situation. Maryland could win this one by 30.
Okay.
I'm going to take Maryland. Let's move on.
Is that not PC?
Let's move on for that. Arizona at Colorado. Colorado's a 3.5-point favorite.
Yeah, even with the questions about Khalil Tate's availability for this one, even if they go with Grant Gunnell, who played last week in the win against UCLA, I think the Wildcats will be fine either way. Colorado's defense is just too bad.
Big fan of what Colorado potentially could do here. I go in Buffaloes.
I like Colorado. I think Colorado's, their defense has worried me a little bit. I do think Arizona is a better team with Khalil Tate in, obviously, and he was bouncing around the sideline, looked like he wants to play. So I think Arizona could win this game for sure. But I've been sort of riding Colorado, thinking that people undervalued them throughout the year. I think there's another spot where they're going to prove some people wrong.
I like Colorado. I like them even better at home. Give me Colorado. Northwestern at Nebraska. Nebraska is an 8-point favorite.
Yeah, for reasons we talked about earlier, Nebraska needs this one. And maybe I'm putting a little bit too much stock in preseason expectations here, because Northwestern will Northwestern you at times, and this seems like a spot where they might do it. But I'm going with the Huskers.
Nebraska, as you said, needs this one. Adrian Martinez needs this one. He will be better than he was against Ohio State, where his QBR was 3.4. Let's do this, Scott. Nebraska.
Yeah, I'm going to go Nebraska as well. Less a bet on Nebraska, more fade on Northwestern. That offense is just, man, it's bad. It's ugly. So I'm going to go Nebraska here.
I'm on the train, Nebraska. The next game, Iowa at number 19, Michigan. Michigan's a 3.5-point favorite.
Yeah, there's a part of me that wanted to get sucked into Michigan blew out Rutgers last week. Maybe they've got it sorted out after all, but I'm not going to let myself fall into that trap, and I'm going with Iowa.
It was Rutgers, yeah. That's the only reason Michigan won that game big. I think Iowa wins this one. I think Iowa will run the ball, and I think Iowa will also stop Michigan's ground attack. Let's see what Shea Patterson can do against a non-Rutgers opponent.
I'm a little bit worried about this game. I think Michigan could bounce back. I think this is, it's time for them to play well, and Iowa's record could be a little misleading right now, but my principle this year across the board has just been trust my eyes. Iowa's just look better. I'm going to go with Iowa again.
I knew you guys would pick Iowa, so I'm picking Michigan. I believe they do bounce back. Let's go Wolverines. Number 25, Michigan State, and number 4, Ohio State. Ohio State's a 20.5-point favorite.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Michigan State will find a way to make this game ugly and maybe even cover, but I don't think there's really any reason for Ohio State to worry outside of what happens to them sometimes in previous season against the Spartans. But I think what we've seen so far under Ryan Day is that this Ohio State team is playing a little bit more clearly and with a sense of purpose, and I don't think they'll fall into that trap where some of those late Urban Meyer teams did.
Ever since the game in which the Buckeyes forgot they had Ezekiel Elliott on their team against Michigan State and lost, these games have been ugly. I'm always tempted to kind of think Michigan State's going to, ugly it up. Not today. Ohio State wins and covers.
Yeah, they won by 20 last year. I think they won by 35 the year before that. I mean, the mystique of this game has lost its luster a little bit. I think Ohio State's just that much better than Michigan State. They haven't played a lot of really impressive offenses as Michigan State. And, in fact, Indiana last week kind of cut them up a little bit in the past game. So I think Ohio State wins big.
I'm going to be saying this a lot. Ohio State big. Number 11, Texas is 11.5-point favorite versus West Virginia. I'm reading that up there.
Yeah, I mean, the trip to Morgantown is always tough, and it's a long trip. But I think Texas is just too much talent, even a little banged up and thin in some places as they are.
Yeah, it's not. Texas wins. Texas is probably already looking ahead to Oklahoma on October 12th in Dallas. I'm looking ahead to that. I will be there. Texas takes care of business. It might not be pretty, but it never is the week before Texas OU.
Upset alert. Watch out. I'm not picking them.
Okay.
I'm not picking
You're
them.
always against Texas, man. It's like, God. Okay.
Well, look, I mean, hey, against Oklahoma State, they almost did lose. This is a scary game. They're really beat up. This is one I'm going to be keeping an eye on. In fact, I think I even picked West Virginia to cover the spread here, but Texas doesn't lose. I think Texas wins.
You don't deserve to have the Longhorn next to your name.
I don't want to get yelled at, Texas. Finally, number 7, Auburn is a 3-point favorite at number 10, Florida.
Yeah, I thought about pulling the trigger on an upset pick here. Florida's defense is really good. I think Kyle Trask has been reasonably impressive, maybe slightly better than Felipe Franks had been so far this season. So I think we'll come away feeling better about Florida, but I think Auburn will win.
Yeah, I've got Auburn. Suffocating defense. Both of these teams have suffocating defenses. I think Auburn does have the better quarterback in Bo Nix. I think Gus Malzahn, again, is going to kind of have a really fun game plan, just like he had 2 weeks ago in College Station. War Eagle.
I'm picking Auburn because I trust my eyes. Again, I think Auburn looks better. Florida has not been overly impressive. That said, I mean, if there's a bunch of Auburns on this screen at the end of this, I've got a feeling we're going to be wrong.
Yeah.
Florida just finds a way to win this game I could very easily see a scenario with some 2019 weird game where Florida gets a pick six and wins it. But here I am. I'm going Auburn.
Breaking news. There's another Auburn going up on the board.
Yep.
I
can't believe this.
I just don't like Florida's offense against their defense. I just think it's a terrible matchup. So I'm taking Auburn. All right. So that does it for us. Any parting shots, fellas? Good show.
No, I mean, Texas would crush Notre Dame on a neutral field. That's all I got.
We know you're
It was
hot
fun,
button
guys.
now.
Thank you.
Yeah. For Bart, for Trey, Connor, Colin, Mike in the back, Kevin Boyler, Aaron, forgot Aaron always, and Ted, of course. Thank you so much. We'll see you next week.
Ever wish the focus was on your team all the time? At 247 Sports, it is. Join us for the 2019 college football season. We've got all new message boards, podcasts, and live shows. Visit our website and make sure you're keeping it locked at 247 Sports, where we're talking your team all the time.